get in here, get in here, get in here, and seja bem-vindo, which means welcome, be welcomed, okay? So y'all been asking me, how did I learn Portuguese so quickly? I don't think I learned it that quickly, but a lot of people do say I've learned it pretty quickly, given how long most people take to learn a language. So I'm gonna talk to you about how I learned Portuguese. And for context, for those of y'all who don't know, I'm wearing a bonnet with the Brazilian flag on it. I bought it yesterday, literally. It was $3. I bought it just for this video. My head is too big for this bonnet. I got too much hair to fit in this thing. But anyway, I want to talk to you about how I learned Portuguese. And I think this is going to be helpful to anyone who's curious about how to learn another language. And for people who just curious about my journey as an expat moving around the world and now living in the country of Brazil, where less than 5% of the population speaks fluent English. If you know another number, then let me know. But I've heard consistently less than 5% speak fluent English. So just for context, okay, I'm from the US. I moved abroad several years ago, started my journey in Indonesia, and since then have spent time in Indonesia, Thailand, South Africa. I love South Africa. Spent short amounts of time in Singapore. Those are just visits and stuff like that. But I've been to a lot of places. And the thing about all the places that I've been to or lived in, they all have very large English-speaking populations, so language was never a barrier. But when I got to Brazil, I had never experienced anything like this, because I came here initially just as a trip with one of my friends. I was planning to be here just for a couple weeks, just to experience Brazil. And my plan was to leave Brazil and I wanted to move to one of the European countries. Like I was considering Portugal or Spain, or maybe going back to South Africa. I wasn't sure. I was just looking for a country that would be affordable, because building financial freedom and retirement readiness, those are things that are incredibly important to me, which is why I love living abroad, because it allows me to really maximize on my ability to make that plan a reality. And I'll teach you more about how I'm doing that on some future videos, because I think it can help you too. So I was looking to go to one of those countries. And when I got to Brazil, unfortunately, my grandmother was dying. She'd had a stroke. We discovered after the stroke that she also had cancer. She was suffering a lot, and she was so beautifully strong, but I think a part of her strength was that she never told us what she was suffering with. So once she was in the state of really declining and we're learning everything about her health, you know, it was tough, because day by day your hope is going out of the window that she could get better. You know, and so when I got to Brazil, a lot of that was happening. Day by day, she's getting worse and worse. Every time I talk to her, this woman who I talk to every day, you know, almost every day of my life, as I'm talking to her more and more, she can talk less and less. I can tell when the pain medicine was really strong. It was tough. I could see myself. We were losing her. And so I made the choice not to leave Brazil when my friend made the choice to leave Brazil, because I think I was grieving too much to travel. I just didn't want to travel. I mean, I wasn't planning to live in Brazil. I wasn't planning to learn Portuguese. I just was grieving the death that I knew was coming. And eventually, once the death did come, grieving that. So I stayed in Brazil for a couple months leading up to her death. And I remember right before her death, I was talking to her, and it was her, as I've told you before, who encouraged me to stay. She's like, stay in Brazil. It's beautiful for you there. You seem happy there. Just stay. She died barely a month later. And so I don't know if I stayed here just to honor what she asked me to do, or if I stayed here just because I didn't want to travel anymore. But either way, I was here and I needed to learn Portuguese. So the way I learned Portuguese was probably different than a lot of people, because you have to keep in mind, I do have a learning disability. And I remember when I was growing up, it was kind of hard for me to read. I was kind of slower when it came to reading. Things didn't always appear in order for me. Definitely was very hard for me to focus on things. So when I started learning Portuguese, I remember I went to this class, and on the first day of the class, the instructor comes in front of the room. He was like a college age, well, maybe a graduate student age kind of student. I think he was like literally a graduate student learning translation, learning English or something like that. He was learning to teach people languages, right? He was a translation kind of student. And he goes in front of the room. It's just me and another student in there on the first day. And he puts up on the board all these conjugation rules. And he's speaking in nothing but Portuguese. The other student doesn't really speak Portuguese. He was from some European country. I want to say like Ireland or something like that. Me, I didn't speak a lick of Portuguese. We all put this on the assessment when we started the class. He's speaking in nothing but Portuguese and conjugating verbs, you know, nos vamos, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? And so I'm not one to hold back, especially if I'm spending my money on a service. So I was like, excuse me. And he says, and I was just like, I don't understand what you're saying. He then responds in Portuguese. I look at the other guy. I said, excuse me. And I was just like, I don't think he understands either. I was like, do you understand what he's saying? And he just kind of said that he was very timid, but he appeared that way. And then, so I was like, excuse me, teacher. I was like, I don't mean any disrespect. You speak some English. I know you speak English. Could you please move back a tab with what you're teaching us? Because I don't even know ABCs in Portuguese. I barely know how to say good morning. I can't count. I don't know nothing. So could you break it in half, maybe speaking half English and half in Portuguese? Because I don't think I'm going to get anything out of this class. Now, I know some people say that was very bossy for me to come into a class and teach him how to teach, but I just knew it wasn't going to work for me. So needless to say, we had a conversation after the next class, and he let me know I probably would not be an ideal student for the class, okay? So I switched to another class. She was a wonderful instructor, same issue. It was more focused on rules of the language and grammar. And I very quickly learned that if you try to go with the traditional language learning approach, like going to a school or on these apps and stuff like that, they're wonderful. But sometimes they focus more on grammar and rules. And I don't know about you, I don't even know English grammar that well. I can speak good English, but if you were to tell me conjugate this or blah, blah, that, or the adjective, subjective, verb, I don't know what you're talking about, but I know how to speak English correctly. So you can speak a language correctly without knowing the technical ways to conjugate and all the technical grammatical rules. So anyway, what I made a decision in my mind was, I was like, I'm clearly not a traditional learner. At the time I was almost turning 40. I was just about to turn 39. And I said, I'm clearly an older learner. I need to learn in a way that's going to work for me. So I concentrated on learning Portuguese through saying, what do I need to know in order to operate my day-to-day life? Right? The woman who works in the grocery store, the man who works at the post office, the person who's renting this apartment to me, how do I communicate with them? And so I found that the best way for me to learn Portuguese was by putting myself around people who speak the language. Critically important. And I'm going to tell you how you can do that even if you're not in that country where you're trying to learn the language. Let's say you want to learn French, but you are in Minnesota. You know what I mean? And you're not around a lot of French speakers. I'm going to tell you how you can do this, okay? So I gave myself permission to start making friends, even if they did not speak English. and clearly I didn't speak Portuguese. I was there, and it was really easy to meet people because I was usually by myself. When I went to a restaurant, people see you sitting by yourself. So the staff comes over, hey, are you here by yourself? I see you here every day, and they would start a conversation. Even if it was broken Portuguese, I would use my Google Translator app. They come over, bom dia, can I help you, blah, blah, blah. And I would just say into it, hi, I don't speak much Portuguese. Can you please talk to me through this app? And they say, sure. And then you start conversations that way. Slowly but surely, I started making friends. And I just accepted the fact that I would not understand most of what they were saying, and that was okay. We could figure it out. And the way that we figured it out is a very structured approach. Was if I was sitting across from one of my friends, someone who I was talking to, what we would do is we would use Google Translate. So I'm talking to you about, oh my God, guess what happened today? You talk into Google Translate. There's a way you can talk into it so you don't have to type. I never understand when people want to type into these translation apps. Hit that microphone button and talk into it, right? And so I would talk into it and say what I want to say. And then what happens is after you talk into it, you can hit the play button and it will play out loud what you just said, but in the other language for the other person. Because remember, I'm talking to someone in Portuguese. So I'm speaking into it in English. You hit the play button and it speaks to them in Portuguese. They can read it as well, but it can speak to them. Why did I like hitting the play button? Because it's a learning tool. I'm speaking into it, right? And then I hit the play button, and as it's reading out what I said out loud, I'm reading on the screen the Portuguese words while also hearing the app say it out loud. So that allowed me to learn in different ways. I teach people how to sell insurance. I teach adults different tools, how to sell, how to grow their income, all these things. I teach for a living. You see me on camera, I'm a teacher. And so with that understood, I'm always focused on the fact that we learn in different ways. Some people learn through writing things, some people learn through reading things, some people learn through hearing things. This allowed me to combine together reading and listening. So it's hitting two parts of my brain to help expedite learning. So that's a really helpful tool, speaking to the app and then play out loud what the translation is while reading it. You will not feel like you're learning very much in the moment. 5 minutes later, you will forget everything that was there, but trust me, it's going into the back of your brain and it will come back up later on when you need it. Trust me. A big part of language learning is trusting that you're learning even when you don't feel like you're learning. That is very important. I think that's important in most areas of learning, but especially in language learning, okay? So that would happen. And what I started to notice was that over time that was so effective, because what would happen is I would notice that over time, while talking to my friends and people that I would meet or just people in the grocery store, I noticed that over time, I needed to use the app less and less. This was not an overnight process. Maybe after a couple months, I noticed that when the other person was speaking into the app, because why am I using my hand like it's the app? But when they were speaking to the app, and I would hear them talking, after a while, I started to notice, okay, I think I know what they're saying. So it's almost like a game in my mind. Like they speak into the app, and before I even read it or have them play it to me, I'm guessing what they were trying to say, and I say, okay, let me verify. Oh, okay, I was right. I got about 20% of that correct. They were talking about a sofa, okay, but not what I thought. Okay, so I was like, okay, so that was testing my knowledge, and over time, little by little, I found, oh, I don't need the app anymore. True story. I was out this week. I was at several dinners and several lunches for different things I was doing. And it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I did a milestone in my language learning journey. I did not need Google Translate at all. Now, that doesn't mean I understood everything that was being said to me. There are times when I'm sitting across from someone and they're talking, and I have to say, fala devagar, which means speak slowly, right? Speak slower, right? Because you're talking, but you're talking too fast. I don't need Google Translate, but I need you just to talk slower so I can hear what you're saying. Or there's talking, and I may understand about 55%, 60% of what they're saying, but for what I don't understand, what I did understand can fill in the gaps, right? I'm like, okay, I get what they're saying for the most part. A couple words in there I don't understand. Or they're saying something, but there's a word that I just don't understand. It sounds like that's a really important word that I need to know. So I'll just say, no entendi, blah, 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 blah word, right? Because it's my way of saying, I understood everything you said, but just that one word I don't understand. Then they can explain, they'll be like, cheapo, blah, 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 blah. It's a blah, blah, blah. They tell you what it is, or they express it, because keep in mind, less than 5% of the people here speak fluent English. So the people I'm talking to, sometimes the way they have to explain to me what they mean is expressing it like, And then I'm like, oh, okay, the wine glass. I know what you mean. Yeah. They over there in the cabinet. La. It's over there. La means there. And so anyway, I noticed this week, I was like, I don't use Google Translate really at all anymore. So that was a huge milestone. So for me, I guess the way that I really learned Portuguese, and I'm still learning. My vocabulary needs to expand more. It's taking time. Think about when you were a child. How did you learn language? Through exposure, right? And so nonetheless, I'm getting exposed and my vocabulary is expanding. But I think the biggest thing was immersing myself and putting myself around people who speak the language. Now, I've mentioned before to you that if you're in a place where you can't necessarily do that so easily, I get it. There are different apps and different services online that you can utilize for that, where it can match you with other speakers of the language you want to learn. And you can do conversations like that where you're able to practice your French, Portuguese, Spanish, and they're able to practice English with you, or whatever your language is. You can do it as an exchange. There are different apps out there. I'll put the links below this video just so you can consider utilizing them. So that's a great way to do it. There are also language immersion programs or language exchange programs. You'd be surprised what may be in your city or within a relatively close mile radius of you, where people come together. They call them polyglot societies, people who like learning languages, and you can exchange. You're talking to each other. And so for me, that's something that I also did. I have a really good friend who's one of my dance teachers. I like dance. I tell y'all I don't like dance, just so y'all don't ask me to dance, but I'm quite a good samba dancer, I've heard. But one of my friends who's a dance instructor, that's one of the things we do. When we get together, he speaks to me in Portuguese. I respond, well, I'm sorry. He speaks to me in English because he's trying to practice English. So he speaks to me in English, I respond in Portuguese, right? And so that's another thing, which is very common, that you'll see people where one person speaking one language, the other person speaking the other language, and you're kind of exchanging that way. And if ever you just don't understand the other person, pull out Google Translate. So this was my way of learning. It really didn't cost me anything. I think that the other apps, Duolingo, all that stuff is really, really great. I'm just not a very structured academic kind of person. So if it feels like school, I don't want to do it. Other people love it. I know people who've become very fluent that way. Another thing that helped me out tremendously, music. So y'all know I jog, okay? That's how, look at me, I jog. I do what I got to do. And so when I'm jogging, I make it so that I listen to pretty much, it's got to be Portuguese music, right? And by Portuguese, I'm talking about straight up Brazilian music. I'm talking about Leo Santana. Go look him up, baby, okay? My God, today, okay? I'm talking about Chim Maia. He got this song called Você. Chim Maia, so Chim is T-I-M, Tim. That's Chim in Portuguese, all right? So T-I-M Maia, M-A-I-A, okay? His song is called Você, V-O-C-E, V-O-C-E, right? Which means you, right? He got this song, that man, when I say that man will sing anybody under the table. Gilberto Gil, okay? Gilberto Gil. So Gilberto, think Gilbert, G-I-L-B-E-R-T-O. Gil, G-I-L. Baby, he got this song called Palco. Palco means stage. I love it. So Yvette Sangala. Ba, 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 da, da, ba, ba, ba. Y'all know who I'm talking about if you listen to the music. Ludmilla, Gloria Groovy. I listen to all this different music in Portuguese. It's good music. It's just good music. It sounds good. I love it. A lot of it sounds like R&B or pop music that you hear in the States anyway. It's just in Portuguese. And I start listening to a lot of that as I'm jogging. And in the beginning, I didn't know what these people were talking about. I just was listening. It sounded good. It's a good beat to run to. But over time, I'm hearing these phrases over and over again, so that when I'm talking to a friend and someone says a similar phrase, I'm like, I've heard that before. I heard that in a song. And I'm like, oh, they're talking about this. So music, I know people who've learned the language by watching a lot of TV shows. They just watch a lot of TV shows. Here's the approach I do when I watch TV shows. Even right now, I'm watching this new Tyler Perry movie with Taraji Henson in it and Sherry Shepherd. I watched the show in English, like I'm watching it in English, they're talking in English, but I hit the subtitles on in Portuguese, which you can do in Netflix. I turn those on in Portuguese so that I'm reading what they're saying in Portuguese. It's very helpful. Or sometimes I do vice versa, right? Regardless, I just do the things that I enjoy, but I make sure that Portuguese is a part of it. So that's how I learned Portuguese. I know it's a lot. I can definitely do more videos. If you want to comment below and ask me more questions about this, then that's helpful. But I just wanted to give you all sort of a broader perspective on the different things that I did, because it wasn't just one thing. It was a lot of things that came together, and it wasn't very structured. I just have lived my life. I've made friends. I watch TV. I just find a way that in everything I do, whether it's social interaction, watching TV, listening to music, I try to make sure that that language is a part of what it is that I'm doing. So at this point in my life, the only time that I'm really communicating in English is when I'm on camera with you all or when I'm doing my work itself, because my work is obviously in English. But for the rest of my life, I have intentionally done the things I could do to make sure that Portuguese is a dominant part of it. And that, for me, has been a great way for me to learn Portuguese without really having to spend much money on lessons, instruction, schools, anything like that. So hopefully that can help you as well. All right, y'all. Until next time.